The wind cut through the mountains like a razor, whipping the snow into stinging sheets that hammered against Marin's face. Her thin coat offered little protection, and her gloves were soaked through, fingers numb and trembling around the tiny bundle she carried. The baby in her arms whimpered softly, a fragile sound swallowed almost instantly by the roaring blizzard. Every step she took was a battle. Snowdrifts rose higher than her knees, and the forest around them seemed to stretch endlessly, twisting into shadows and shapes she couldn't recognize in the white haze. "If you bury me," she said, her voice cracking against the wind, "bury my baby too." She spoke not as a plea, but as a command, her tone chilling in its finality. Her eyes, wide and dark with fear and determination, met the stranger standing a few feet away. The man's presence had been unexpected, a lone figure in this frozen wasteland, part of some distant patrol or perhaps just a wanderer who had wandered too close. His coat was thick, his rifle slung loosely over his shoulder, but the snow clung to him like a second skin, turning him almost ghost-like. The man opened his mouth, unsure whether to speak or flee. "Marin, he started, but she cut him off with a look sharp enough to pierce the storm itself. Her gaze burned with desperation, yet there was an unspoken weight in it, as though she carried the truth of 100 lives on her shoulders. Her jaw tightened. "There is no I in this," she said. "If I die, he dies. If I survive, we both survive. You understand?" He did not fully. He could not imagine the terror of a mother holding her child in the teeth of a blizzard that seemed alive, a force that twisted and moved with intent. Yet even as he hesitated, the snow around them began to shift. At first, it was subtle, a drift curling oddly, a swirl that rose too high to be natural. Then it started moving in patterns, as if the flakes were obeying some silent command, circling them in gentle arcs. Footprints left in the snow moments before were already vanishing, swallowed by the storm as though the earth itself were intent on hiding their passage. Marin shivered violently, pulling the baby closer. Her lips brushed the tiny forehead, and she whispered a string of words in a language the man could not recognize. The baby quieted immediately, as if lulled by some invisible lullaby carried on the icy wind. The man's heart thumped painfully in his chest, and though he gripped his rifle tighter, he knew it would be useless if the snow decided to act. Already, it seemed to ripple with consciousness, moving around them in slow, deliberate waves, like a sea of white that refused to obey the laws of gravity. "You feel it too, don't you?" Marin asked, though she did not wait for an answer. She stepped carefully through the drifts, guiding the baby with gentle but unyielding determination. "It listens, it knows promises, it knows who keeps them, and who breaks them." The words were barely audible over the blizzard's howl, but the man understood the weight in them. Some part of this storm was alive, and Marin had learned its language long before he had stumbled into this frozen nightmare. A shadow shifted beyond the trees, a dark smear against the whiteness, and the man instinctively raised his rifle. But Marin's gaze never wavered, she did not flinch. Instead, she whispered again, her breath clouding in the icy air. "The snow will protect us, if we are true to it." She pressed the baby closer, a fragile shield against the storm, and a strange calm seemed to settle over her. The snow around them rippled, forming subtle arcs and curls, rising slightly as if acknowledging her words. The man felt a mix of fear and awe. The storm had grown wild and sentient, and yet it responded to her presence, moving in patterns too precise to be accidental. He realized then that the woman in front of him was not just struggling for survival, she was commanding the storm itself, bending its chaos into a barrier. The realization left him breathless. He had faced cold, snow, and even wolves in these mountains before, but never had he felt the raw force of something so ancient, so alive, bowing, at least partially, to a single human will. Marin took another step forward, her boots sinking into the deepening snow, her resolve unbroken. "We cannot wait," she said. "If we stay, they will find us, and it will not be enough for me to survive alone." She glanced back at the man, searching his eyes for understanding, for a promise, for something to anchor them both in this shifting world. He swallowed hard, nodding, though he had no idea what he had just agreed to. The snow swirled faster around them, spiraling like a living thing, and for the first time, the man understood that this storm was not just weather. It was memory, judgment, and power all wrapped in white. And Marin, for all her fragility, was its keeper. The storm had not lessened, if anything, it had grown more deliberate, more purposeful, as though testing them. Snow swirled in intricate patterns, twisting and curling around the trees, forming shapes that seemed almost human. The man's heart pounded in his chest, but it was a rhythm of awe as much as fear. Maren moved steadily, her steps confident despite the treacherous terrain. Each time her boots sank into the drifts, the snow around it shifted, almost like it was acknowledging her presence, parting slightly to create a path. "Do you see it?" she asked softly, not needing to look at him. The whispering sound was barely audible over the wind, but it carried through the icy air like a living voice. The snow was murmuring, a sound that twisted around the trees and clawed at their ears. "It knows us," she continued. "It knows what we promised." The man swallowed hard. He had faced soldiers, wolves, even avalanches in these mountains, but nothing like this. The snow was alive, more than alive, it was aware. It moved with intent, curling and twisting, forming arches and spirals that would collapse and reform in impossible ways. Footprints, both theirs and others, vanished almost as soon as they were made, erased by the restless, conscious frost. He could feel it brushing against his legs and arms, brushing with an almost gentle insistence, as if testing their will. Maren adjusted the baby in her arms, cradling it close. "If they take us, it will end the way I feared. If we survive together." Her gaze, fixed ahead, was unwavering, and yet it seemed to see more than the man could comprehend. Shapes moved in the snow, faint shadows of forms, twisting and swaying. Wolves, spirits, or the memory of some ancient force bound to the mountain. He could not tell. The blizzard obscured everything, yet he could feel the eyes of the snow upon them, judging, observing, calculating. The whispering grew louder, swirling through the air like the wind itself had grown a voice. The man's teeth chattered, not from the cold, but from the creeping sense that they were stepping through something older than humanity. Maren's lips moved in a slow, careful rhythm, reciting words he could not understand, and the snow seemed to respond. Drifts shifted before their eyes, curling up like protective walls around them, guiding them, shielding them. "They call it the old magic," Maren said quietly. "The mountain remembers promises made to it, to the earth, and to those who walk its paths honestly." Her eyes flicked toward him, and for the first time, he felt her fear, not of the storm, but of what might happen if the snow turned against them. It does not forget, and it does not forgive easily. A shadow passed between the trees. The man raised his rifle automatically, but Maren's hand on his arm stopped him. "It's not human," she said. "Don't shoot. Whatever it is, it's watching, not attacking." Yet, the snow shifted around the shadow, rippling like water, bending and curling around it without touching it, as though acknowledging some unspoken rule. The man's mind reeled. He had no training for this, no experience that could make sense of a blizzard that behaved like a living sentinel. "Step carefully," Maren instructed, her voice firm despite the shiver in it. She moved with a fluid grace, guiding the baby through the snow as though she had done this 1,000 times before. "The snow tests us. It moves for those it trusts, and it blocks those it does not. We must show it we are true." The man followed her, though his every instinct screamed that they were in impossible danger. The snow parted for her, forming arcs and paths that could not be natural. He tried to imagine the physics of it, the wind patterns, the weight of the ice, and found nothing that could explain the phenomena surrounding them. And yet, with every step Maren took, the path cleared, the baby remained warm, and the whispering grew more coherent, more like a guide than a threat. "It is alive," he murmured. "The snow is alive." Maren glanced at him briefly, and for a fleeting moment, the vulnerability in her eyes surfaced. "Not all living things want to harm," she said. "Some protect, but they demand honesty, devotion, and promises kept." She hugged the baby closer, her voice breaking with emotion she did not attempt to hide. "If we fail it, if we break its trust, nothing will stop it from claiming what it is owed. And nothing, not even us, will survive." The man shivered, both from fear and understanding. They were not merely moving through a storm, they were moving through a conscious force, a mountain that had memory, will, and judgment. In Maren, she had learned to speak its language, to walk its paths, to survive in its presence. The snow shifted again, forming a corridor, almost like arms lifting them, and the man realized that their survival depended entirely on trust, trust in her, and in something far older than either of them. As they pressed forward, the whispering of the snow followed, curling around them in patterns he could not decipher, whispering warnings, guidance, and secrets of the frozen mountain. Every step was a test, every drift a lesson, and every breath a negotiation with the living, sentient cold. By dawn, the storm had finally softened, the blinding swirl of snow reduced to gentle flurries that drifted lazily through the pale morning light. The mountains, once a maze of violent white, had calmed, leaving an eerie stillness that seemed almost sacred. The man blinked against the weak sunlight, his breath forming clouds in the cold air. The snow around them had settled into strange, swirling patterns, intricate and deliberate, almost like frozen calligraphy. He knelt briefly, running a gloved hand across the frost, marveling at the complexity of the designs. Whoever, or whatever, had moved the snow had done so with intention, leaving a trail that spoke of memory and vigilance, as though the mountain itself had recorded their passage. Maren stood in the center of the clearing, her small frame silhouetted against the shimmering whiteness. The baby in her arms slept peacefully, untouched by the cold, wrapped in layers that seemed to radiate warmth beyond the confines of their thin fabric. Maren's coat was dusted with snow, but she was unshaken, standing tall despite exhaustion etching every line of her face. The man approached cautiously, every step in acknowledgement of the invisible force that still lingered, as if the mountain watched their movements even now. You saved yourselves," the man whispered, awestruck. His voice felt inadequate against the silent majesty surrounding them. Yet, as he spoke, he realized it was not merely their survival, it was the mountain's judgment, the storm's decision, and Maren's determination that had carried them through. She had been the catalyst, the interpreter of the living snow, and somehow the mountain had recognized her vow, bending its power to protect her and the child. Maren looked down at the baby and smiled faintly, exhaustion and relief mingling in her expression. "It saved us," she corrected softly. "Not entirely me, not entirely us. The mountain, the snow, it has memory, and it keeps its promises." She turned her gaze toward the man, her eyes shadowed with the weight of what they had endured. "It doesn't forgive mistakes lightly. It demands truth, courage, and honesty. I spoke to it, and it answered. That is why we live." The man nodded, feeling the truth of her words resonate through his chest. He had never witnessed anything like this, never imagined that nature could be so sentient, so unforgiving, yet so capable of mercy. He looked around at the swirling frost patterns once more, marveling at the shapes etched in the snow, arches and spirals that seemed almost like messages, warnings, or perhaps even a silent applause for those who survived. Maren shifted, adjusting the baby in her arms. "We cannot stay here," she said. Her voice was quiet but firm, carrying a sense of purpose that matched the resolve she had shown throughout the storm. "The world beyond these mountains is waiting, but it is not safe. Not yet. We survived this, but we cannot take our lives for granted again." The man followed her eyes toward the narrow path that wound between the peaks, now partially revealed in the soft morning light. The snow had moved, forming a subtle corridor, almost like a guiding hand pointing them onward. He felt a strange reverence, a sense of humility before the mountain's will. Every instinct screamed caution, yet he trusted Maren completely. She had spoken with the snow, navigated its tests, and proven herself worthy of its protection. He realized that survival was not only about physical endurance, it was about understanding, respect, and promises kept to forces far greater than themselves. The baby stirred, opening tiny eyes that reflected the pale light. Maren cooed softly, brushing a strand of snow-dusted hair from the child's forehead. "You survived because we stayed true," she whispered, almost to herself. "Because I promised, and because the snow remembered." The man felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold, it was awe, tinged with fear and wonder. The mountain, the snow, the storm, they had all borne witness to the bond between mother and child, and in doing so, had honored it. They began to move again, carefully, step by step, following the invisible guidance of the living snow. The patterns beneath their feet seemed to shift and pulse slightly, as if breathing, reacting to their presence. Maren led, the man following close behind, both aware that every motion mattered in this delicate balance. Though the blizzard had passed, its lessons remained: vigilance, honesty, and respect for the old forces that still governed the mountains. As they disappeared into the frozen expanse, the swirling patterns in the snow lingered in the air like faint whispers, etching themselves into memory. The mountain exhaled a soft, almost imperceptible sigh, as though acknowledging that its judgment had been honored. Maren walked on, the baby cradled safely, her steps leaving no trace. And somewhere, deep in the heart of the mountains, the snow shifted once more, whispering a single, chilling truth: some bonds, some promises, transcend life itself, and they endure long after the storm has passed.